Everyone. Welcome
So,
to another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. Got my brother back here again, and we're going to talk about subjects like Rick and Morty, creativity, workouts, and the show Lowdermilk that you told me about that you wanted to discuss, which I've never heard of before. So, yeah, do you want to talk about any of those in particular?
well, I guess I'll be a completely logical person and work backwards from the end of your list. Yeah, so the show Loudermilk is just for anybody that hasn't watched the other two of these that we recorded already. I'm an actor who lives in Vancouver, so I audition for stuff pretty regularly. And one of the shows I auditioned for recently is a show called Loudermilk, which if you have Amazon Prime Video in Canada, you can watch it all for free, which is what I did. And it's just a really interesting show that I thought you would actually really like. It's about recovering alcoholic. He was a music writer, like a music critic. He worked for the Rolling Stone, and a bunch of other magazines, and published books about the best songs and the worst songs ever and stuff like that. But battled drug addiction and alcohol addiction for years, and then eventually fell off the wagon and quit his job and kind of quit his life and lost his wife and everything in between. And then in the show, he's now an addictions counselor. Like he works for, it's essentially Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's a different organization in the show. It's casual.
Yep,
And
it's not a Mindgasms podcast unless I smoke weed on camera.
yeah, well, I mean, it's legal in Canada now, right? What was I going to say? But yeah, what I really like about the show is it's just kind of really darkly humorous. It's a Farrelly Brothers show with another guy,
Oh,
Bobby. Can't remember his name. Bobby somebody. Um,
and that for people watching who might not remember who those are, they did move like sort of raunchy comedies from the 90s, like There's Something About Mary, and I can't think of other examples, but there are plenty, I'm sure.
yeah, there was that one with Will Arnett and Will Forte about the Siamese twin brothers. I can't remember
Is
what
that
that
the
one was
Brothers
called.
Solomon, or is that a different one? Is that the one where they're both
That's a
trying
different one.
to? Yeah, that's the one where they're both trying to get a child because their father's dying and he wants a grandchild before he dies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, and it's just a really funny show because most of what it's about is him trying to kind of like restart his life and sort of relationship with this woman, and then there's this girl who ends up moving in with him, who he kind of she was suffering from drug addiction, and he helps her out and stuff, and then but all the characters that are in his like alcoholics and addiction support group are like ridiculous crazy people. Like there's just this like weird neurotic like middle-aged goofy looking dude, but he has all these stories about like sucking dick for crack and almost ending up in prison and stuff like that. And there's this like old dude with a big beard and stuff like that who like thought Y2K was a real thing and like dug a bunker in his backyard and was in underground for like 6 years, and then when he came
After
out,
like until 2006.
yeah, and then like
Oh
when
wow.
he came out of the bunker, he didn't know how to adjust to society or something like that, so ended up like addicted to meth and just all kinds of funny crazy shit. I think you'd really enjoy it. So anyways, that's my unsolicited plug for that show, just because I thought you would be interested in it. And I think like part of what makes it really interesting to me as a show is it's kind of authentically funny. Like it most of what happens in the show that makes me laugh really hard is just stuff that would probably make me laugh in real life. It's not like a lot of other typical sitcoms where there's just kind of like punchlines and gags and like people obviously poking fun at each other to get the comedy. It's just like the situations themselves just actually kind of naturally lend themselves to humor, which is what I think is really interesting. And then they also just kind of play on a lot of really funny stereotypes. Like there's a thing they meet at a church in a like suburban community for his addictions counseling meetings, and there's like a random super waspy like 21st century, quinoa and granola vegan couple moves in and, of course has problems with just about everything he's doing and leads to hilarity. But anyways, that's that.
I do
Yeah,
like
more
raunchy comedies. That
something I
sounds
thought
good.
we could probably talk about at least somewhat at length is I feel like you and I live a somewhat similar existence of balancing a large number of different pursuits for varying different just like objectives in our life and needs that we have to fill or goals we want to accomplish or whatever else. So I guess like I'll let you take the microphone for a bit if you will. What's like an average, I guess, like day or an average week like for you in terms of like the different things you're working on and the different kind of stuff you're trying to get done in terms of like you work out x number of times and you write a certain number of times and you're recording podcasts and you're working or tutoring or any of those other kinds of things.
Well, I guess I mean depending on how much I have to work, and I haven't been working that much lately because there isn't that much tutoring during the summer, and I've been working for a moving company, but not as much as I would like. So I do have more time to do creative stuff lately, which is good. But regardless of how much I'm working, I always make time to like pretty much every day, or at least almost every day, unless I am just slow and don't get to it. I either do some writing or do a podcast or something like a video. I like to alternate. Like on one day, I'll maybe edit some of my novel, edit some of a chapter that I'm going to post on my blog because I'm much farther ahead in the actual editing of my novel on a Word document than I am on the chapters that I posted on my blog. Or I might work on a blog, like I'm working on, I think, the fourth one in a series on Operation Downfall, which is the invasion that was going to take place during World War II if Japan had still kept attacking after the bombs had been dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then I also am still working also on a blog series based on my friend David's backpacking trip in Africa. I think it was 2 years ago now, but he wrote like journal entries for not every day, but most days. And then so I alternate with writing those sorts of things between that and YouTube stuff. So YouTube stuff encompasses podcasts like this, and then also reading my novel chapters on my YouTube channel, and then also working on vlogs, which are, I usually write those out first. So I'm working on the next one in my series on Foucault's book called The History of Sexuality Part 1, because that's going to be my next vlog. And then sometimes I do just quickies, which are just like me ranting off the top of my head. And I think I think that's all I do, like for those four different things for videos, I guess, and then like three or four different things for writing. So I guess like like you were saying before we started this, creative expression in multiple mediums, and I also do fiction and nonfiction. And why don't you explain
Well,
what you've been working on
and
lately?
then that's just like the creative pursuit realm of your life, if you will. And then you were saying like you
Yeah.
have a couple different things that you do for work, but then you're also a very like physically active person.
Oh yeah.
Like you spend a
Yeah.
lot of time, you know, exercising, whatever else. And then you're also a very like content consumptive person. Like you like read a lot and watch a lot of podcasts and watch a lot of movies and whatever else. So like, and I know you're a little bit of an anal person in terms of like your scheduling and your routines and stuff like that. So can you talk a little bit about like how that fits into the, you know, 10 different creative pursuits you're also
Mm-hmm.
pursuing?
Yeah. Well, I I work out 3 times a week usually. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday usually, and I do. So on Mondays are my like I call them CrossFit slash high intensity interval days. So I do like I do usually 6 or 7 different exercises, higher reps, and incorporate kettlebell exercises and body weight movements into those, and then do basically do those one right after the other with maybe like a short break to catch my breath or something like that. And then on Wednesdays, I do yoga, and I usually just do part of the P90X yoga video that I have, and then on Fridays I go and lift weights at either our friend Jeremy's house, who we used to train for powerlifting with because he has a gym in his garage, or I'll go to the Y or the wellness center and I'll do like just basically heavy weightlifting strength movements, sort of like what we used to do when we were powerlifting, like squats and deadlifts and bench and overhead presses and rows and different variations of those. And I guess in terms of my routines, yeah, I do usually have really specific routines. So, like, say on a day when I'm doing a workout, I usually like to make that the first thing that I do, and then on a day that I don't work out, I like to make my whatever form of creative expression I'm practicing the first thing that I do, and I make that the second thing I do if it's a day on which I'm working out. So I make sure I do those, and then other than that, I mostly just do mm, like just basic things like chores and showers and stuff like that. And I usually I usually take a I guess I spend a lot of my days, like you said, also consuming content as well. Like I watch a lot of YouTube videos and listen to podcasts, and I read a lot every day too, which it feeds into helping my creative expression a lot too, because I'm always getting all of these fascinating ideas and worlds from fiction in my head for fiction, and I'm always thinking about and discussing and writing about really intellectual ideas too. So I like how all of those feed off of each other.
Right. Cool. I was just kind of like, I guess, generally speaking, curious how you kind of balance all of those things. Because I think something,
I do actually have a harder time balancing them than I just made it sound, because, but partially because I watch so many goddamn YouTube videos, like way too many, and partially because, like a lot of people, I'm addicted to my phone. So I check it too often, which I've been working really hard to curb more lately. Like I'll only check it after I do a certain thing, and I'll only check one thing. Like I'll only check my text, or only check my Facebook messages or Snapchat or whatever else. And it I've been I've been noticing lately that I haven't been relaxing enough too. Like I haven't been watching TV for like an hour or two every night like I used to. So I've been trying to like deliberately find more time to relax lately too.
just been like watching too many YouTube videos, man. I haven't been relaxing enough.
Well, a lot of that is not really really
Yeah, no,
not
I know what you
relaxing. Like
mean.
it's
Well, so
like
this
watching
kind of brings me to two topics that I was hoping this talking about this might be a springboard for. One of which was Shane and I were talking recently about for anyone who doesn't know, in this podcast, Shane is a longtime friend of both of ours that we grew up with that now lives in Vancouver, where I live. We were on this big long hike, and we were talking about going out for hikes and going climbing and going out on random adventures and doing stuff and just kind of like living a busy, active life where you have a lot of ambitions and a lot of goals, and there's all these like different things you could try to accomplish or experience or whatever. One of the things Shane brought up was we were both working on this event on the beach in West Vancouver, and one of the guys on our work crew hadn't worked with another member of the work crew since the previous year working on that festival. She was like, "Hey, dude, I haven't seen you in like a year. Like, what have you been up to? What's new? What's going on?" And he was like, not much. Just, like working full time for the construction company now. So, like, that keeps him pretty busy. And then, just kind of like hanging out and enjoying the summer. And, like, what have you been up to? And Shane was just like, it's been a year. How have you, what do you mean nothing? Like, that's only 40 hours a week. Like, what the fuck do you do? What do you spend all your time with? Like, and I was like, no, Shane, like, what you don't understand is like, for a lot of people, like 8 hours a day or 5 days a week, or like 10, for this guy, he works 10 hours a day, 4 days a week, and has 3 days off every weekend. For a lot of people, that like that much in that day is enough work and tiring enough that they're not then going to go do anything else substantial. Like say you work, I don't know, 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 4:30, which means you have to get up at like 6:30 or 7, and then you don't get home until 5 or 6, and then you want to get to bed, and like you said, you want to have a few hours to relax, and you need to have some time to make food or do whatever. Like that's pretty much all your time in the day. They pretty much just like already immediately write off Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday as like days in which I might accomplish things. Or if they're accomplishing things, a lot of people are a little more motivated, I might say, than maybe Shane is, to do things like go to movies or go to concerts or just like go out for dinner or go to the bar, or just like kind of have like a quote unquote social life or a nightlife, if you will.
Yeah.
Which a large part of that is that Shane doesn't drink, and Shane doesn't really involve himself in most of those activities anyways, so whatever. But anyways, and
Yeah,
then I was
yeah.
like, and then
Most people
also
do
like,
that. Yeah.
if you're doing that kind of stuff, that's like mundane and normal enough. You're probably not going to mention that to somebody when they're like, "What have you been up to?" You're probably not going to be like, "Well, I went to the movie and went to the bar quite often." Like that's
Yeah.
just, it's almost just like implied. And then the other thing I was saying is like, and then for I think a lot of people, the work, the stress, the energy, whatever you want to call it, of doing that work during the week is enough to like tire them out and make them want to rest on one or both of Saturday and Sunday, and or just like not do stuff that's necessarily super demanding, like
Yeah.
maybe go to the beach, or go to the movie, go to the park, go to a random event, go to a soccer game or a football game or a hockey game or something like that. Do whatever other random mundane things, again, which are things and are cool and are fun and probably enjoyable and take up your time and take up some of your money, but aren't necessarily like worth writing home about, in the sense of you're going to tell people about it when they ask what you've been up to in a year. So it's totally possible for a whole year to go by and all you've really done is like see some concerts, go to the bar a few times, go out for dinner a few times, see some movies, go to the beach, like do things that are enjoyable and that are fun, but not necessarily any like check marks on boxes or bucket list things or like goals, objectives, ambitions, whatever else you want to call it. And I was
Yeah.
like, and the thing I realized, it took me like well into my adulthood to kind of realize this, is like, and for a lot of people, that's not unfulfilling. Like, there's lots of people doing that who aren't doing that because they're like, oh, that's just as far as I got today. That's just like, that's just actually what they want to do. Like, the point I was trying to make to Shane is like, if you don't really have the ambition to do like bigger things than what you're already doing. And I don't like using the term greater because it implies that like things people are already doing is like
exactly.
lesser, which is not what I'm trying to say.
Sorry,
But
Nick.
if you don't have the ambition to
I gotta
accomplish
interrupt you
things
for a
beyond
second
what
because
you've currently achieved,
Nick, I'm
yeah,
just
we
gonna
say,
interrupt you for a second because Channing's gonna join.
oh, cool.
Yeah. But yeah. Let me see. Oh, I gotta change this. Hey, Channing, you there? What's up?
Yo.
You guys can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. All right.
Hello.
Which of these screens look better to you guys? This version of the split screen or this one?
That one.
I feel like
That one? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. Channing, you and I did a podcast recently, and for those people who don't know, well, actually, I don't care. Most people watching this know who we are, but yeah, Nick and I were just talking about. Sorry, I kind of interrupted you, Nick. You can keep saying what you were saying. We were just
Yeah, that's
talking
okay.
about. We were just
I was just kind of talking about
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of people who just kind of like don't really have a tremendous amount of like ambition or motivation or desire to like accomplish some like wild crazy objective in their life or like do something that's like way further or beyond or bigger than what they're currently doing. And like it kind of took me a while to realize that there's not actually anything wrong with that. Like, I remember when I was first in theater school, for example, I would like encounter people who kind of like didn't really have an significant ambitions of success in the industry. They just kind of like thought acting was fun and it might be interesting to get better at it and maybe they'd get some work doing it. And I was like all confused when they were like, not like wanting to go to Broadway or go to Hollywood or end up like a star or the lead in a TV show or getting to write their own movies or whatever else, like big things. It just kind of like surprised me that there were lots of people around who just that was fine. They were fine with just kind of like normal. And I was just because it was funny talking to Shane about that. Like, there's not a single thing about him that ever really aspires for like small objectives. He always kind of wants to go for the like big, crazy, as hard as you can try, which I think is true of most of our group of kind of friends and people we hung out with a lot growing up. So yeah, it's just funny because there's almost like a disconnect of like saying that to him. He was like, "What do you mean? Like what? Try to do stuff. Like fuck."
Yeah, I like what you said there. I've actually been thinking that about that a lot myself lately. That aspect where you were talking about how it seems like most people who do that do just the standard what we refer to as like the sort of standard 9 to 5 existence, I guess you could call it. They don't seem to have any problem whatsoever with just working jobs that they hate or are just sort of impartial towards, and then just spending the rest of their time just enjoying life, like going to watch movies, like you said, like I don't know, reading and watching TV and stuff like that, but never really getting into any like creative pursuits or like physical pursuits with a particular goal in mind, like that. Like maybe part of their free time is spent going to the gym, but not like competing in sports or anything. But I mean, I personally, I'm not saying that those things are bad at all either.
Yeah.
Like the different way that people want to spend their time, if like I personally am of the mind that people should do whatever the fuck they want to do as long as they don't harm someone else. And if people don't want to do all these things like write or make videos or like acting or anything to do with that you do, Nick, or like anything like that, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that, like you were saying, that's one thing that I'm understanding more and more as I get older, because I definitely had that mindset that Shane had for a long time. Like, why the fuck would you just like spend all your time sitting around and stuff? But then the older I get, the more I'm like, that's kind of nice. I should do that more often than just being obsessed with all of these other things all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have like a little bit of a dual perspective on it to some extent sometimes, because like on the one hand, I think about like it's hard to even comprehend that, for one, because I've just like for so much of my life lived my life on the basis of having things that I'm like really passionate about and really ambitious towards and really like driven and dedicated towards accomplishing. So it's hard to envision an existence absent of that. It's like, trying to imagine what it's like to be deaf. I don't know, like I wouldn't be able to hear anything, but if like I can plug my ears and kind of like guess that it would probably be like that. But I mean, I guess it's more the reverse of like asking a person who's always been blind what it's like not being able to see stuff. They're like, I don't know, I've never seen stuff, so this is all I got, bro. You know?
Yeah, it's
Um,
like, and you could look at that from either perspective too. Like they could look at that as someone like you and me, from the same perspective too. Like, why would you want to do that? Like, why would you want to spend all this time like basically immersing yourself in a fake person that you're going to play on a stage or in a show? Or for me, like, why would you want to spend all this time just like making up shit in your head and writing it down and showing it to people, or like just talking about people and sharing it with people online? Like, why
yeah.
would you want to do that shit?
Well, it's funny you bring that
And
up because, like, so Shane's training for an ultra marathon in the fall right now. So we were working on this event, and we get an hour lunch break every day, and an hour is like way more than enough time to eat a whole bunch of food, and it just kind of ends up being time that you sit around and don't do anything, or you chat with people, or maybe you can like
unless you're
read a
me.
book or something. Or a lot of people just kind of end up like getting tired and like lethargic, and then it takes a while to like remotivate people in the afternoon. Or some other people will like, go for a walk to somewhere to get food and then eat there and then come back, and that takes up like 40 minutes. But what Shane
Shane
started
goes for
doing
a
is he
run.
would go for a half-hour run, and then he'd have lunch, and he'd eat like a bigger lunch at our first coffee break in the morning, and then like an early big snack slash kind of dinner at our second coffee break in the afternoon, to make up for the fact that he only had a small lunch because he. But like lots of people were like,
Mhm.
dude, we're like walking around and carrying heavy stuff at the park all day and like being physically active outside. Like, it's supposed to be a break. Why do you need to go for a run? And he's like, because I want to get better at running. Like, carrying stuff and lifting heavy things and walking around in the park doesn't make me any better at running. Running makes me better at running. So I'll go running.
Yeah,
You know.
it's
But then
it's kind of
at the other side of that, I feel like that whole like, man, it must be nice to like not have four things on your mind that like keep you up at night and make you want to waste all your free time, you know, clawing your eyes out and beating your head against the wall trying to accomplish them. Because that whole like, you get home from work and you have nothing to do, and that feels nice, and you just sit down and watch a TV show thing, sounds beautiful. I've never experienced it, but it sounds like it would be nice,
yeah,
you know?
exactly. Uh, Channing, I bet you have some interesting thoughts on this, because you and I were talking the last time we talked to my podcast about how you have had major life changes, like fairly recently, well, relatively recently, in that you used to have really high paying job with long hours, and then just sort of live that stereotypical lifestyle and spending a lot of money and stuff, and then you gradually realize that uh, that it was making you miserable and you wanted to make some changes. So what do you think about that in terms of what we were just talking about?
Yeah, I was collecting a lot of thoughts over that conversation. I'm playing World of Warcraft right now too, so if you can hear my keys clicking, I
Okay.
apologize. Um, I don't know. I think it's there's a lot of different factors that play into it. I think first of all, it takes all kinds of people to make the
Yeah.
world go round. Not everyone is going to be chasing, you know, reaching the top and changing the world and stuff like that, because I mean the world just wouldn't function if everybody had the same exact mindset.
Yeah.
We need small time community leaders. We need people who just want to do labor. We need people that just want to think. We need people that want to write, and we need all sorts of people to make like a functioning society, obviously. But I know personally for me, like I've learned a lot about myself lately, and um, just like the role that um, responsibility has, and how much it can actually affect your life. And just putting your own talents and skills to maximal use for yourself and for people around you, and how much that affects everything, and how positive that is for you and everybody else. And right out of high school, I was just basically handed this job that paid essentially infinite amounts of money. Um, and it was like I started earning money, which obviously allows you to basically do almost anything. You can buy anything, you can go anywhere, you can attain anything. And I never really understood um, exactly. I mean, I think it should go the other way. I think you should realize first what it is that you need before you start earning money. Um, because then once you start earning it, you're earning it for a reason that you actually understand. And that's what I've kind of been learning lately is just like once you actually have a purpose, a motivation behind something, that is a difference maker in how you approach things. For instance, like my fitness career lately, I'm up at 4:30 every day. I exercise for about 5, maybe 6 hours, and
Jesus.
it's fucking psychotic. I don't ever take days off. I burn over 5,000 calories a day. I'm not trying to brag or anything. But most people would look at this and say, why? Like, what? Why are you doing this? You're fucking stupid. You're crazy. There's no need. Just eat less.
Yeah.
Don't exercise as much. You'll look the same, everything. But
Did
I
you
don't know.
did you start getting up at 4:30 because of Jocko?
No, it's just the gym opens at 5.
Oh, okay.
I'd be up earlier probably if it opened earlier, but
Oh, okay.
it's weird, man. Like this structure. I mean, first of all, I'm very motivated um, with so many different aspects of fitness. Fitness has taught me so much about life, about um, earning things, and about discipline and responsibility and everything. I mean, cutting corners is so easy, and people cut corners all the time. But if you don't allow yourself to cut corners and you really hold yourself accountable for everything, then you start to like kind of reprogram your brain, and it's very beneficial not just for fitness, but it carries over into so many different things, and it all kind of relates back to the role of usefulness and responsibility, and um, kind of utilizing individuals to their skills and potential. And the structure of people just working 9 to 5s, you take 50 different people work for the same company that do a very similar job. Each and every one of those 50 people have different attributes, different skills, and none of those people often in regular work environments are really getting utilized properly. And it's tragedy, because I think it's like a big cause of why so many people are so unhappy. And that's, I know for me, like you could have put on 5 more zeros onto the end of my paycheck and I still wouldn't have been happy.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know. What do you guys think about all that?
Well, like I for one am really glad that you learned that lesson, and through your own experience too, because that makes it much more meaningful than someone just telling you all that stuff, right? Like you lived your life one way, and you realized the faults of that, and then you changed and you realized how much better your life can be, and like in terms of like basically having the discipline to work out so much, and how it can, we were talking about that last time, about how so much of that is mental and how it can transfer to other areas of life. And that reminded me of I the other day I was thinking, because I know that like some people have natural biological setbacks, like some people are physically disabled, or like they're like something like that, like they're not actually physically capable of exercising or something like that. But 99% of people can exercise, and you can like continuously get into better shape, basically. Like it I the other day I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, man, Sylvester Stallone is like, isn't he in his fucking 60s, and he's in like those Expendables movies, and he's in like 10 times better shape than I am? And I looked it up, and I saw, oh, Sylvester Stallone is 73. And I put up a picture of him on social media. Yeah, uh, getting out of shape is totally an inevitable part of aging. Look at Sylvester Stallone, he's 73. And then one person said, yeah, that's what testosterone and steroids get you. And I said, yeah, but you can't just take drugs and go sit on the couch and get into amazing shape.
No, people like to just say that because they're too damn lazy to put into work themselves. And
Yeah.
it's a shame because like, it comes from like a bitter perspective. Because you know what, deep down everybody wants to be the hero in some way, whether it's like the best, you know, doctor, or you want to be the best motivational speaker, or you want to be the best athlete. Like most of us have, it's just like embedded in our DNA. We all want to be great at something. You know what I mean? Most people
Mhm.
aren't willing to put in the work because they just feel like there's such a disconnect between them, petty little them who can't even run a mile, or can't even hold up a intellectual conversation for about anything relevant for more than 2 minutes. If what they want to be is, like a podcaster, or anything, and they just look at the best in the world at what they like, and they compare themselves to them, and they just think there's such a disconnect between them, and it's just they'll never be able to attain anything, and then they get bitter. Yeah, well, if people just take steroids, Sylvester Stallone is injecting all these things, that's why he's jacked. It's like it's easy to just dismiss people's success, when you're just
Yeah.
bitter. And it's, anyone who's ever succeeded at anything or accomplished anything will 100% understand that. It's not even
And I think part of that disconnect too is that people don't see all the work that goes into that. Like people don't see all the work that Sylvester Stallone put into being in fucking crazy good shape even in his 70s. And similarly, like they, well, in a podcast or something like that is different, but they don't see like all the work that I put into like my novel or short story that I write, or like a video that I made that I wrote something out for, or with Nick, with like a play, and all the work that goes into that, and all the coordination between all the different people in the different departments, and that
Well, or
sort of
so
thing too.
so it's like, okay, so let's say, sure, Sylvester Stallone took steroids, or so and so took this drug, or whatever else. They didn't then sit on their couch and wait for muscles to appear.
Uh-huh.
It's like at best they put higher quality fuel in a more powerful engine and still drove it there. You know,
Yeah.
like if they're trying to get to the end objective, they just, spent the extra money on the higher powered vehicle and the premium octane whatever fuel instead of driving an old fucking Jeep there. But like, they didn't not do work. Maybe you used some strategies that some other people frown upon. But like, I wouldn't even things like that. I wouldn't even argue you can say taking steroids is cutting corners. It's doing things to get where you want to get. You know,
Yeah.
if everybody else who's in the playing field you're trying to be a part of is taking an illegal drug to be on that field, you're an idiot not to take them.
Yeah.
Basically, not that I'm
Especially
saying you
since
should take steroids. I probably would endorse not being a part of those playing fields, quite frankly. But if that's the ambition you have, then that's where you're at. You know.
you mean like
Um,
you'd never take steroids if you were gonna be in a fucking big, awesome, badass action movie with tons of action stars? I don't think I would, but would you?
I'd probably just like hire better trainers to help me get there without needing to use the drugs. But like, I mean, that's which is where like that's where I feel most people would argue that that is cutting corners, is because it's not like you don't need the drugs to get there. The drugs just make it easier or faster or whatever. Or, getting back to the other thing that Channing was talking about, I think that's like largely where most of Shane being kind of like bummed out by people not really doing anything outside of their 9 to 5 life is that whole thing about like people not capitalizing on their skills and their talents. Because I think like you're totally right, we need all kinds of different people in the world, and not everybody can be aspiring towards the giant crazy objective, or trying to change the world or doing whatever else. And I think in a lot of ways that's how we end up with a lot of people who have jobs that they don't necessarily love, or maybe only kind of enjoy, or maybe they totally hate, or everything in between. Is there's probably like a handful of people on earth who actually like love being a plumber, and they're like super into changing pipes and like dealing with buckets of shit all day, and whatever else. But like for
Wow,
most
there could be way
people,
more than a
they're
handful.
they're doing it because it's a job, and because they learned how to do it and they have the skill set for it, and maybe they like don't mind it that much. And that's probably mostly true for most jobs, most places in the world. There's a small portion of the people doing the job who are actually like super passionately into the job and are there because it's like the thing they're desperate to do in life. And then most of the people there are doing it for anywhere between, I kind of don't mind this, to fuck this job, I fucking hate this. And then if in their free time they're pursuing something beyond themselves that is, ambitious and interesting, and motivates them to something higher, or whatever else you want to call it, then that can kind of still be like quote unquote enough, if you will. Where I think a lot of people end up being like totally unfulfilled is they're not doing the other thing. They're doing the like soul sucking, I don't really give a shit about this job because I just did something that would make me money and support my family and whatever else. And then in all of their free time, which there is a lot of it, you're working 40 hours a week. Cool. You got lots of other hours in the week. They're just not really seizing on anything or going after anything. And that's where it kind of starts to feel like disappointing, or you get kind of feeling let down, is you can see these people with these obvious talents and skills and abilities and capacities for things that just aren't going anywhere with them. They're just kind of like sitting on their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just thinking to segue into the most important topic that we haven't discussed yet. Unless you guys have any more to say about that, be fun to talk about Rick and Morty.
I don't even know what the fuck that is.
You don't even know what Rick and Morty is? Okay, well maybe we won't talk about it for that long though. Then
What did you want to, if I might ask before we get on to the topic, what did you want to talk about Rick and Morty? You just kind of wanted to like bring up the show and see where that leads us, or did you have something specific in mind?
No, just in general. So
Please excuse me while I mute my microphone and take a phone call.
okay. So Rick and Morty is like this. I'm surprised that Shane or someone hasn't told you about that, Channing. But it's this animated sort of adult cartoon show, and it's like a science fiction one where all sorts of crazy science fiction happens. And like I've watched podcasts about specific episodes. That's how nerdy I get about it. There's this podcast called Wisecrack, where they they do both shorter videos, and then they started more recently doing longer podcasts about individual episodes of Rick and Morty and South Park, and then specific movies too. So like for example, I was watching a one of their podcasts last night in which they were talking about the episode called Rick Poachin number 9. So Rick is this he's Morty's grandpa, and he lives with Morty's family in their house, and he's like this fucking super genius scientist that does things like he invented a portal gun, for example, that allows him to go through that portal that his portal gun creates and travel between different universes. And so like this one thing, I think that my summation of their podcast about the episode last night was, if there are parallel universes, would it matter if you took the place of your dead parallel self in a dead parallel universe? Because that's what they end up doing at one point in the episode. Rick fucks up the universe too much because he's done these experiments involving making a love potion to get Morty's high school crush to like him, but he fucked up he couldn't get the recipe quite right so many times. So like eventually it got to the point where it just turned everyone else on the planet into this giant fucking warped alien monster who is trying to eat Morty. So Rick decided
That's a massive
yeah.
miscalculation.
Yeah. So Rick decided he's fucked up this planet in this universe too much. So we're going to go to this other universe. Rick and Morty just killed themselves in an experiment in this universe. So we're going to take their places and abandon the family in that other universe. And we buried their bodies in the backyard, and we're going to take their places. So
what's the motivation behind that? If it's a parallel universe, what are you going to get out of it?
Because they still want to have like be around their family.
But you said they abandoned where they were.
Yeah, because he fucked up the world because it was filled with all of those aliens that was trying to kill Morty. Yeah.
Oh yeah, fucking, I'd do that. Why not? Well, it's either that or fucking nothing.
They kind of go to like quite elaborate extremes in the show of like kind of challenging like the fourth wall even, and like kind of norms of what TV shows do. Like one of the things they're pointing at in that episode is like it's a really common thing in like The Simpsons or Family Guy or South Park, for example, for them to like ruthlessly fuck up the city or the world or whatever in the show, and then at the end of the episode it's like still fucked up, obviously, and then the next episode everything's just fine. There's like nothing is said about that, no dialogue, no information, just everything's back to normal. You know, there's like an episode of South Park where freaking Mecha Streisand comes through and demolishes everything, and then the next episode of South Park everything's just fine again. There's all kinds of Family Guy episodes where characters die, and you know, we discover crazy things about long lost siblings and relatives and whatever else, and then the next episode everything's just back to normal. So I think that's a big part of the thing in Rick and Morty is they're just kind of like almost making like a meta joke about what cartoons always do, about like, no, if we fuck up a universe in this show there are consequences. Except really there's not, because we'll just go to a parallel universe and live there instead.
Well, except they were pointing out on that podcast too that one of the things that Rick and Morty does differently is they actually stick with those changes in a way, because like I didn't even think about this until they mentioned it. So that as looking at the episodes after that one I mentioned as them living in a different universe with different versions of their family members, like Beth and Jerry, who are Morty's parents, and in the first episode of season 3, Rick and Morty dig up the graves of the dead Rick and Mortys in that universe because they have to get Rick's portal gun because I forget what exactly happens, but he gets into this point where Morty has to save him. So they actually do have that continuity in it. But at the same time, at the time, they were making jokes about that. And like you were saying, they make meta jokes about that all the time. That It was, I think it was Shane who got me into that show. And I like it because they go into all these super complex science fiction topics, but it's also hilarious. And Rick is awesome because he's like the epitome of a fucking nihilist, yet he's also a super genius. But his main motivation is to not just fuck around with science, but also he likes to just fucking party and relax, and he's an alcoholic too. So he's a very interesting character.
Yeah. It's just kind of a weird, like, adult comedy, anything goes show, and it's written by people who are clearly like very intelligent and bothered to do their research beforehand. Like it's a lot more accurate to how science works than a lot of other shows are too, I would say.
Yeah, Dan Harmon is a super nerd for sure.
Yeah, I honestly don't really watch any TV. My schedule is pretty packed up. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to say I don't have time for
I work out all day, every day, man.
But yeah, I don't know. I just have like my little ritual, regimen, fucking routine, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I mean, there's like, I can't remember what the exact, I'm sure the statistic has changed more so to the ridiculous in the last few years, but there's like, it was a few years ago now, I remember reading the statistic that there was more content uploaded on YouTube daily than you could watch in an entire lifetime.
It's something like 1 billion videos a day.
So like, and that's just YouTube. Like, think about the number of video games there are, the number of movies there are, the number of TV shows there are, the number of podcasts, the number of YouTube channels, there's just like, there's so much content. No one could possibly even begin to scratch the surface of trying to consume all of anything, right? So you're just kind of pick and choosing what you have time for. Like Channing's playing World of Warcraft right now, which takes up some of his time, which he could be using to watch TV or whatever else, but he'd rather play World of Warcraft. There's nothing fucking wrong with that. I was thinking about, like, you were saying we could talk about Deadpool and John Wick on this podcast, and I was like, well, we could, except I haven't seen any of those movies. And you were like, what? Watch those? And I was thinking, like, well, I probably could take the time to watch those, but it's like the time I would take to watch those, I've watched like TV shows that I have auditioned for, or I've watched like rock climbing videos, or I've watched other movies, other TV shows, played video games, watched, stuff with my girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah. Like I have my little ritual at night and stuff like that. I watch my shows at night. I smoke a bowl, maybe 2, sometimes 3, maybe even 4.
Oh, Rick and Morty is great for that.
Yeah, see, I've just never been into fucking cartoons. Even if they're like beyond intelligent, I still can't. It's just something I've never been interested in. Like, I don't like South Park. I don't like Archie.
Don't like South Park. Oh.
Right? Like, I know it sounds outlandish to most people, but like, I just can't. I don't hate it, but like, it's just
not your thing.
I could think of so many other things that I'd rather do. But no, I'm sure it's a good show. Everybody has shows and different like YouTube channels and writing and podcasts. Everyone has their own style of obtaining information or entertainment that resonates with them, I guess. And I guess every time I see a cartoon, I just want to kill myself. I can't watch it.
Well, I think they're mostly meant to be for entertainment, but I see what you mean totally. Like,
yeah, like
you
I watch
said,
Friends every day. I'm pretty sure most people are gonna, and I don't mean like all day. I just mean like that's my little ritual. Like for my last meal of my day, I make like a pretty large meal or whatever. I get high and I eat in bed and I watch Friends and I pass out. It's just like something I like to do. I don't get anything from it, but and then after I eat, I lay down and I watch some YouTube, debates or videos. I've been watching, weirdly enough, this is going to sound weird. I've been watching Judge Judy. It came up on
Really?
not the show, but like she's done a lot of interviews and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just because like I've been watching so many different interviews with all sorts of different people, like all of Joe Rogan's guests, and then I've been watching like Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang. For whatever reason, I've became interested in politics, which is super weird for me. But just listening to what these people have to say.
Right.
And for whatever reason, this interview with Judge Judy popped up, and it was the Oxford, that channel where they just talk to people or whatever. I can't remember what the channel is called. But she's actually surprisingly intelligent for how much of a cunt she is on her show. She's actually like, she says some real stuff that makes fucking a lot of sense. I'm surprised. So yeah, I don't know. Just I always stumble upon new shit.
Yeah, she kind of like, she's got like kind of pigeonholed into this weird box of like just dealing with like shitty people and kind of having to, tough love speech a lot of them and be like, stop being shitty people and these shitty things won't happen to you because you won't be a shitty person. And then they're like, but I want to be shitty though. And she's like, no, you fucking suck. And it's just and sometimes she's definitely like overly harsh. And you could probably cut some people some slack or just like talk a little bit more nicely to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting that. Well, and it's also like I wonder how much of it is just like a put on persona to make the reality show more marketable,
Yeah, it makes you wonder, right? I mean, no doubt, like that's her own little, her own little spice on. That's how she communicates with people, I guess. But like, all in all, like the years of experience that she has dealing with like, troubled people in really shitty situations, poor
Yeah.
people, broke, all these sorts of people. Like, she's really gotten a good understanding of like how humans work, and she has a lot of good shit to say about like, general principles that people should live their lives on. And I don't know, I was just surprised because like everything I've ever seen or heard from Judge Judy was just like, you're an idiot, get out of my courtroom. I never really had an opinion about her.
Yeah, right. It's like it'd be like learning that Dr. Phil was secretly like a deeply, deeply talented mental health counselor.
I think he actually is. Now you mentioned that, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast and seemed like actually, I'm not sure if I watched the whole thing, but
he's like less. He's definitely less of an idiot than he comes across on his shows, I would say.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't like. I don't know that he has a lot of like. He has a lot of experience talking to people. I don't know that he has a lot of necessarily like intellectual backing to his knowledge.
I don't know.
Like
watch the Joe Rogan episode and see. Like I said, I don't actually remember it that well, but I bet we would be surprised.
I was insanely surprised what he was saying on the podcast. But
oh, you saw it?
Yeah, I've seen. I think he was on the Ben Shapiro podcast as well. He's actually really smart.
Okay.
He's a good. He's good at his craft for sure. But I mean, like the amount of fame that he has versus like, if you try and like chalk up his amount of fame to his like actual ability and skill in his field.
Yeah.
There are people out there that no one knows that would do a far better job, I believe.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. It's interesting about Judge Judy. I've never really. I've probably, like you, Nick, I've probably seen her like maybe 30 seconds of clips of her show or something like that. So that's interesting.
She just like comes across as some crazy bitch, but when she's not like dealing with fucking some guy who stole his friend's car and hit a deer and then like tried to hide it and shit like that. When she's not dealing with morons, she's actually sensible fucking.
Well, that's the thing, right? God, she gets some interesting ones though. Like that's probably made up, but that's probably not even made up. You know what I mean? Like those kinds of things happen on that show all the time. It's like I dropped my friend's baby and broke its arm, but I tried to like pretend it was because it fell out of its crib, and now he's suing me for the baby's deformed or something. And you're like, how the fuck does this even happen?
Dude, I just watched one, and we can move on to something more fucking productive after this. But I have to say this. So there was these two chicks. I guess they were friends or whatever. One chick
Yeah.
was like insanely obese. The other one was just regular, whatever. So the one girl was trying to sue the fat chick for she sat on her toilet and broke it. And she's like, you broke the toilet. And Judge Judy was just like, okay, did you hit the toilet with a hammer? No. Did you hit it with a wrench? No. Did you like body slam it or intentionally try to break it? No, Your Honor. Okay, well then your toilet just broke. That sucks. I broke one 2 weeks ago in my apartment. I had to fix it. I didn't go looking around for the last person that sat on it. So go buy yourself a new toilet and get out of my courtroom. Goodbye.
That's funny.
Damn, dude.
Oh, so good.
For this.
Yeah.
Oh
But I
yeah.
was also thinking it got me to thinking, like, if I wasn't in such a privileged situation, you know, like I have some money, I have access to like family and support and jobs, and you know, I have a brand new phone, I have clothes, I have food and everything like that. But if I wasn't so lucky, like, you know, I'd probably be doing the same shit. I'd probably be bitter, and I'd be in court for something like that, or I'd be like, you know, arguing with my neighbor or arguing with the clerk
Yeah,
at the
right.
grocery store or whatever, right? Like I think it's important to keep that in mind. Like these people that deal with stuff like this, they're not necessarily like that much more dumb than, you know, people like us who don't get involved in these types of situations, but it's just kind of maybe a matter of circumstance, and you know, it could happen to any one of us, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I was thinking about that earlier too when we were talking about creativity and, well, not necessarily creativity, but pursuing some sort of goal or hobby that you're interested in the same way that those people in the courtroom could easily be us if circumstances were different, and a lot of circumstances in life are totally random. We could easily be those people who have no interest whatsoever in any sort of like creative pursuits, or just a hobby, or like anything like skateboarding or something that you think you could get good at. And some people, like, they really are totally content with just like having a job, and maybe they have a family, so having a job and spending time with their family and just doing basic stuff, and it doesn't necessarily make them miserable. Maybe they're not like totally happy and fulfilled or anything like that, but they don't really have that many complaints. So I was thinking about that because, like you were saying, Channing, it's easy because we have the privilege to pursue these things. It's easy to see the way we look at life as superior, whereas in reality it's not necessarily superior. It's just things that we think are superior, and that even some evidence in psychology shows is really helpful for a lot of people. But like you were saying earlier too, Channing, there are a lot of different people, and the world needs all different types.
Well, like for
Yeah.
example, I work at a climbing gym, and there's definitely like lots of people who come there who are trying to progressively get better at climbing because they would like to one day climb X specific difficulty of grade. And like in a general sense, most people are kind of generally trying to climb harder because, that just opens more doors and possibilities for trying different stuff. But there's also a lot of people who like will not be bothered if they never get any better than like kind of middle of the pack, like high 510s, maybe five, like they don't need to get any better than like as good as the average person can get with 6 months to a year of dedicated effort. And I mean, that's the same kind of thing that we all experienced, like going to the gym and just like lifting weights and working out for years. Is like, there's also lots of people who just kind of want to like be in shape, and they don't care about how many hundreds of pounds they can bench press or how fast they can run a mile or whatever. They just want to be able to do it at all. how good they are at it isn't even really like a part of the equation. And like for somebody who's so motivated by those kinds of factors, it's like hard to get your mind around that even.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see people all the time that, like I don't have a problem with anybody. This is something I've learned a lot about probably over the last year or two, and I'm still constantly learning more about. It's like I I know personally for me, I'm extreme. When I want to do something, like when I really want to do something, I go hard. Like I do everything. I prep, I get everything in order. Like it's almost sadistic. It's crazy to
Yeah.
some people. But I mean, I think that's kind of the spice you need in order to be really great at something. I'm not saying that I'm great at anything, but I tried. I give a lot of things my all. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with people that don't do that ever. I don't have a problem with people that only give it 50% or even if they admit, like it's not even admit because it's not admit indicates that they're doing something that's wrong. But like if people are just like straight up like, yeah, I don't know, I mean, I'm just kind of here, I just put in my time and I get out, whatever, it's like that's fine, but don't question the way that I'm doing it and don't attack me for my methods and my motivations, and I will never ever do that for you either, ever,
Yeah.
no matter what. Like I don't care what you're trying to do or why you're trying to do it, unless obviously it's like fucking fucked up or something. But I don't know. I don't have a problem with anybody as long as their intentions are okay and they're not trying to harm anybody or hurt anybody or
Yeah,
anything like
totally.
that.
yeah, I have the same perspective.
Yeah, and I don't know. I really don't like it when I come across people that like their mind is just not open. They don't entertain that people do things differently or people want to try harder at certain things, or like because not everybody is going to want to wake up at 4:30 and go to the
Yeah,
gym for 5 hours. Not everyone has the time to do that,
yeah,
and I don't care if like if you're just like, "Nah, why the hell would I do that?" I get it because most mornings I'm like really reconsidering what the fuck it is that I'm doing up at 4:30. So I get it. I get why you wouldn't want to, but like I also hate when people are like, "Oh, I can't do it. I
You
don't have
could, you're
time."
just
It's
not.
like exactly, yeah. Like,
yeah,
don't tell me you can't. Just say that you don't want to. I respect you so much more.
Yeah.
yeah,
I read
yeah.
this thing. I need to leave for work in a couple minutes. You guys can keep talking, obviously, but so I'll leave you guys with this thing. But I read this thing recently, which was like it's kind of like positioned as like a little bit of a like mental health check-in thing of like trying to re encompass the idea of like I can't or like I don't have the time for that. Because the reality is like everybody on earth has the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Nobody's living like a 28-hour day secretly that we don't know about with like 4 extra hours to get shit done. We're all just prioritizing different things and choosing to get different shit done and not getting other shit done. So the challenge is, which is like, and it is a challenge because it's like hard to admit this to yourself a lot of the time, but like somebody asks you to do something or if you've done something or about something and you haven't done it, rather than saying I haven't had the time or I don't have the time, the real answer is it hasn't been a priority for me, or that's
Yeah,
not a priority for me, or
Exactly.
that's
yeah,
not going to be a priority for me, or whatever the case might be. And like
yeah,
the real problem we encounter in society with that, I think, is a lot of the time that comes across as like impolite or even rude. Like, somebody's like, hey, did you watch my video about whatever thing?
yeah,
And you're like, no, that hasn't been a priority for me. They're like, well, that's mean. Whereas if you're like, oh no, sorry, I just haven't had time, it like comes across that at some point you'll make
yeah,
the time. When like
yeah,
really what you're saying is like at some point it could be a priority for me, but just like right now it isn't.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
when you
like
say you
the
don't have the
way,
time for something, it's like you're implying that you you realize that it's like of the same importance that the other person thinks that it is, but you
yeah,
Yeah.
literally don't have the time. But it's just like it's okay that we have varying interests and like you like this and you've prioritized it and I might be interested, but I really just don't care that much.
Yeah.
It
yeah,
doesn't
Like
mean
that's
yeah.
that
like
Like the way I like to look at it is like there are people who have way less freedom in terms of their time than us. Like there are single mothers, for example, and and I take all that into account. But like for example, I won't say who it is because I don't want to talk badly about people behind their backs. But there was a girl who was going to school full time with me, who was in some of my classes when I went back to Keanu briefly a few years ago, and she had the same course load as I did, and she never worked out, and I did because I prioritized it, because I woke up early before classes every day to work out before going to school. And I think that because I care about it so much, even if I were a single parent, I would find time to work out. But at the same time too, I don't try to judge people either. Like one of my best friends has been like out of shape for a while, and sometimes they work out, but they never consistently do it. But I don't like judge them for that. I don't care. If it's important, then they'll do it. If it's not important, that's fine too. It's important to me, so I would do it regardless of what else I have going on.
Although I will say, I probably would call them out if they tried to say that, like, the reason they're not working out is there's just no time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of
People make
course.
time for what the reality of one thing I've learned is people make time for what they care about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
Yeah.
And if
I
what
had an
they care
acting
about is
teacher one
fucking
time.
Netflix, then
I had an acting teacher one time who said a similar kind of thing about like finances, because somebody was asking him like just like what do you do to like make ends meet when you're like broke and only working a waitress job or whatever so that you can be available for auditions, and how do you pay for acting classes and blah blah, all this stuff and whatever else. And he was just like, there's always money for a sandwich. Like you always find a way to have enough money to get food
Yeah.
elsewhere where you need to. You'll not buy the shoes, or you'll walk there instead of taking the bus or the whatever. There's always enough money for a sandwich. Yeah, sometimes you might get to a place where you can't afford to take acting classes, or you can't buy new headshots even though you need them, or you can't buy a new outfit even though you don't have anything new and that casting director's seen you and that you're whatever else problems. But like the shit that matters, that's really important to you, you'll just figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
that's one of the great
Anyways,
things about being.
with that, I should sign off. Enjoy the rest of your conversation, gentlemen, and I'll see you in the next one.
All right.
Cool,
Thanks for
man. It was nice
talking,
talking.
bro.
Yeah, you too, Channing. I'll shoot you a message soon. I think I'm going to be on the Sunshine Coast in like about a week or so for a day or two, so maybe we can hang out.
Cool. Yeah, hit me up, man. We'll get together.
You bet, dude.
Cool. Thanks for
See you
talking,
guys.
bro. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
I probably got another half an hour if you want to keep chatting.
Okay. Cool. So, what do you want to talk about? You mentioned you mentioned that you've been getting into politics a little bit. What do you think about some of those some of the Democratic candidates that you mentioned, like Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders? And have you been following the Democratic debates? I like those two, and Tulsi Gabbard I like a lot too. Oh,
I'm very
sorry, I had you reopen the
politically
screen.
uneducated.
Wait, go back like 5 seconds. I had to add you to the stream again after Nick left for some reason.
Oh, okay. I didn't really say much. I just said I'm pretty politically uneducated, and that's partly my motivation for learning. But another part of my motivation is I realized that my way of thinking was actually very politically important. And I mean that in the sense that like my values and things that I believe, kind of a lot of the things carry over into modern political views. And just, I guess, through algorithms and everything through YouTube, I just started stumbling upon, Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang. I know Rogan has a lot of these guys on because he likes to talk to these people and see where they stand and stuff like that, and he challenges them and everything. So maybe that's how I stumbled upon it. But um, I really like Yang's idea of universal basic income, or as he calls it, the freedom dividend.
Yeah,
He's trying to rebrand it.
yeah,
Um, Once you understand um, exactly how it's going to function, I think there's a lot of good things about it. I really do.
yeah. Me
And
too.
I also really like what Bernie had to say about education and healthcare and gun control and all that sort of stuff. I really, I think it's great. I think it's really too bad that you can't have multiple people as a president. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
definitely.
shame because I think a lot of these people have such great things to say, and it's just like a total contrast to what the fuck Trump is doing. Because the
Yeah,
guy's just a maniac in so many ways. I mean, obviously he's very economically, uh, he knows what he's doing when it comes to business, I would say. But I mean, that's only one small aspect of how to keep a fucking country. And then, when you're the president of the United States, you're pretty much more um, responsible for the well-being of the world because people follow suit with the United States and they're a big political power in the world. So it's nice to see that these candidates are very educated and they have a lot of good things to say, and there's more than just one. You know what I mean? There's so many, and it's like usually with politics it's like the lesser of two evils or whatever. But I've heard a lot of good things from a lot of people, so it's kind of refreshing in a way. What do you think?
yeah. That I think that's interesting too. And that's an interesting idea too about like having multiple people as leader because you know from Joe Rogan, like I agree, having one person running the whole thing in this day and age is kind of a fucking stupid idea. And it would be interesting to have like a panel of leaders, like we could do that here in Canada too, obviously. And yeah, I like it. I like a lot of those candidates too. Like I like a lot of what I like a lot of what Bernie says. I don't agree with everything he says, and I like some criticisms of him are interesting too. I kind of like to view like a wide variety of political perspectives, ranging from like conservative to libertarian to liberal to progressive too. And it's interesting to see different people's perspectives on things and how they arrive at those perspectives. And but I mean, I like Andrew Yang a lot too, and I think I like Tulsi Gabbard a lot too, and I like all of them for different reasons. So, like you said, it would be so interesting if we lived in a perfect world and like neither of us are Americans anyway, so we can't vote anyway. But if I had a choice, I think it would be really cool to have like Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang, and Bernie Sanders all sharing leadership roles in some way or something like that. And yeah, I mean, like in terms of Trump, that's interesting too. Like there's, um, like you see mainstream media on the Democratic side in particular. Their whole goal is to basically just find someone who can beat Trump, regardless of what their actual policy positions are, which doesn't really make sense to me. And I've seen a lot of convincing arguments about how that's just kind of dumb. You want to have someone be the nominee who people would actually vote for, not just because they hate Trump. Because like we've seen this mindset of how awful Trump is, and just being in opposition to Trump is not actually that effective for like actually finding someone who can defeat Trump in a way. So I think yeah, that's what I have to say about all that.
Yeah, yeah, no, obviously it's a shame when like, the reason your motivation for voting for someone is just that you hate the other guy so much that you're just going to vote for this guy just so that the guy that you hate doesn't win. I mean, like, how the hell can that be the best way? I mean, I think people really don't realize the importance of this shit. Like this is so important to have a leader that is actually doing the right things and doing good things, has good motivations and stuff like that. And you take Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders, and if you allowed them to try and implement their ideas into um, society, and you just kind of let their craft or whatever, like Bernie's big on gun control, education, and healthcare. Like if you let him take care of that, and then you let Yang take care of like the universal basic income and like the financial aspects of all of that and how that's going to work and where it gets funded from and all the rest of that. I mean, like, man, you're talking, those are huge issues. And Bernie can't do what Yang can do. Yang can't do what Bernie can do. So it's like, fucking let them both work. How much better would the world be? You know what I mean? It's like, it's, to me it seems like a pretty simple solution, not a solution, but like an idea that would make a whole lot of fucking sense. Why does it only have to be one dude that wins? And then, everything good that everyone else said, everything good that Yang said and Tulsi Gabbard said is just like, it's not even a thing anymore because, well, Bernie won, and the good things that they said wasn't really on Bernie's agenda. So it's like, damn, we don't get to reap the benefits of Yang's, years of experience and his ideas that are going to work just because Bernie won. Now,
Yeah.
too bad, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a good point too. Like when someone wins, we just stop hearing about people. I mean, the only person I can think of from the American 2016 presidential election, at least particularly on the Democratic side, who we're still hearing about is Bernie Sanders, because obviously he's running again. But I can't even think of anyone else who is running on either side then, although maybe some of the conservatives like Ted Cruz or something, he seems to still be around. But yeah, like this, like incorporating, even if the whatever politician wins incorporated some of the ideas to some of the from some of those other popular people, that would be interesting too. But then since they're the person that wins, they don't really necessarily have any motivation at all to do that, of course, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, one individual can only do so much. You can only focus on so many things at once, and you can, I know this, like I spend most of my day very structured and very detailed, right down to the last detail of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish, focusing on all the things that I have to do. And it's like, if somebody was like, oh, by the way, you have to do this too. And it's like, well, I can't. Like, I already spend all my time thinking about this, strategizing about this, trying to implement it the best way. And I found the most efficient, beneficial way to do it. But like, that's the limit of my capabilities. And that doesn't cover everything in life that needs to be covered. So why the fuck are we letting just one person take care of this I know it's not literally only one person. There's teams of people
Yeah.
that work on stuff, but
And there's the system of checks and balances, which has prevented Trump from doing some of the, well, from implementing some of the ridiculous policy positions that he wanted. Like, for example, I think it was overturned by, I don't remember whether it was Congress or the Supreme Court, that overturned his travel ban that he proposed that would deport people who are from like Muslim countries or something like that. And he's been blocked so many times with trying to build his wall too.
yeah, I mean, shit. It just seems so crazy, the stuff that he's trying to do. I mean, obviously you need border control, otherwise shit's gonna get crazy. But I don't know, it just rubs people the wrong way when you say you're gonna build a fucking wall, dude. Like, that's fucked
Yeah.
up. Like I don't even know what to say about that. And I'm just so out of the loop with politics and like it's so weird. Donald Trump, like I remember back when like my earliest memories of remembering a president of the United States is George Bush. That's when I started, even listening to it. I think that's when the internet started to take off, so it was more easily accessible
Yeah,
to
it was
regular
probably me too.
people. And it's like when I remember when you used to see Bush say things on the news or whatever outlet back then we listened to big news on, like it was a big deal when he was talking. Like people, obviously not everyone agreed and there was a lot of people that hated him, but like when he talked it was a big deal and people took what he said seriously. But like now when I see Trump talk about shit, I literally don't know if he's fucking being serious or not.
He
And then he's
trolls like half
retweeting.
the time at least.
Yeah, and he's tweeting all the, and I think it's great that, you know, a, that somebody like the president can have a personality. You know what I mean? Like I think it's great. Like we all go home at the end of the day and we take a piss and we watch YouTube and we eat fucking Doritos and whatever. Like we're all human, and I think it's good that to know that people can have a personality and people can be themselves and it doesn't mean anything bad. Just like when Elon Musk smoked a fucking joint on the Rogan podcast, like that was a big moment in history. Uh, like I think it was a really iconic moment for so many different things, and I think it's important that people of power and people that are supposed to have these positions of importance and charisma can have a fucking personality. They can be themselves, they can crack a joke, everything's okay. But like when Trump tweets and shit, I literally don't know if he's fucking serious or not, and it's a
Yeah.
problem.
And another piece of that too is that now the media everywhere is reporting all day long about what Trump is tweeting, instead of focusing on the real issues 99% of the time in terms of his policy decisions. Like one of the things that like more, I guess you could call them more like progressive anti-war YouTubers who I follow point out all the time is that um, the media spends all day obsessing over ridiculous shit that Trump says on Twitter, but and it totally misdirects from stuff he's doing, like the illegal regime change wars that he's expanded on, that Obama also expanded on, but he's done so even more, and like illegal regime change wars in Yemen and working with Saudi Arabia to engineer regime change wars and bombing the fuck out of Syria and trying to while almost attacking Iraq again and all this sort of fucked up shit that the mainstream media almost never talks about.
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, I think it's like when like Conor McGregor, you know, posts something on Instagram and it's like people hate on him. People just sit there and comment and they want outrage and they want to point fingers and they want to like point the faults of people and everything like that. I think that's what like the media just is crazy for pointing out what Trump is doing and pointing out why he's such a shitty person, why he's such a bad president and everything. It's like if you focused any of that attention on like what needs to be done and what should be done and how we can do it and how we can collaborate as a fucking species and get things to happen and people can work together and people can, you know, implement policies that actually start to noticeably work. But nope, they just want to fucking shock people and outrage people and it's just fucking, it's crazy. Like how can it be that all of the attention, like all of the attention and focus of these media, you know, news, whatever, like all these big companies that are just talking about Trump all day long, they have so much power. Like they control, not control, but they really manipulate how people think. And I think so much better shit could be done than just to be hating on somebody all day and like outrage people. And like it's just a waste of fucking time and it's not benefiting anybody at all.
Yeah, exactly. That's why like that's why another big piece of this too is that, well, we're in the social media age with Trump, and we haven't been in that as much with any other president, even Obama. Like Twitter wasn't a huge thing when he was in office, or at least he didn't participate in it that much. So like part of that is tearing down this idea of presidents being so presidential, and then also because we have access to what Trump says on Twitter all day, that's what a lot of news media are getting their news from. And then it's like it's almost an incentive for that, well, like even further incentive for that, because just social media in general is literally designed to promote and accelerate outrage. I
Literally,
did.
yeah, because it gets the most attention, and that's what generates the most fucking money, and it's obvious, like that's what's happening, and it's sad. I think in some ways, I think it's going to be good that Trump had this like just not give a fuck attitude. Like, okay, I guarantee the next president is going to be active on social media. I would almost bet
Oh
money
yeah.
on that. And I think that's a good thing because I mean, like if you could determine what's the best way to communicate with the most people right now, it's fucking Twitter and Instagram and whatever, right? Obviously, and Facebook. So I think it's a good thing. I mean, that's the modern era of our communication. That's how we talk to people around the world is the fucking internet. So why not utilize that as a tool to benefit everybody? But I mean, Trump's obviously he's misusing it as a president. You need to be professional. Like that is literally like you can't even think of a title that's of more importance that you would want to stress portraying yourself as a professional more than the president of the United States. So he's obviously misusing his platform, but I think it's good in the way that he's kind of opened up the possibility to, anybody can use social media. It's a great way to communicate with people. Obviously, there are downsides to it because a tweet only extends so far. So I mean, you generate outrage. You post a 220 word tweet, and fucking people go crazy. They respond to it negatively, they respond to it positively, people start fighting in the comments, blah blah blah. But I mean, there are obviously more effective ways to use it, and I think that whoever wins the next uh, election is probably going to utilize social media as a tool. Hopefully it's not Trump, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of think that it will be Trump, because like the Democrats are behaving the same way that they did before, and I mean it already seems like the DNC, because of the polls that they choose, for example, they're not going to let Tulsi Gabbard into the next debates. And it seems like one thing that I like that Andrew Yang said in one of the debates, he said, these are not real. This is reality TV, what we're doing right here. So that's like
It's
in a more direct, and I think a better way. It's almost like he's showing that the emperor has no clothes, basically, in the same way that Trump is inadvertently doing. uh Andrew Yang is pointing out directly in terms of the way politics is portrayed to the public. And with Trump, it shows that in some ways he doesn't have as much power as we think he does. And also, his job is not necessarily like it takes away some of the prestige of that, which I've heard people make convincing arguments that that's somewhat of a good thing too, because it means that he gets away with less. Like there are all these vapid anti-Trumpers now, which I think they get carried away with their criticism sometimes, like calling him a Nazi and that kind of stuff. But it's good that that's happening in a way too. Like we're being exposed to all the bullshit that is actually involved with all of this.
Yeah, we're in a very weird transitional period in history right now, and it's hard to think of it as that because when you're living in it, you don't really view history as, 200 years ago versus 200 years in the future. It's hard because I mean that's 4, maybe even 5 generations of fucking people. So people are often caught up in their own little life. So it's hard to like view it, our situation as a transitional period. But it really is. I mean, what we're experiencing right now is so weird. It's so fucking weird, but it's going to eventually result in something that's really good because these matters are going to get to the point where we're not being proactive. Like you talk about healthcare and education and important big topics that we're trying to be proactive about, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see it working, but it'll get to the point where we don't need to be proactive anymore. We need to be reactive. And that's when people start to really work together because people can do amazing things when they have to. And we can get shit done real fucking quick when your back's up against the wall. And I think that's probably what a lot of these issues are going to, it's going to get to that point where we need to react to horrible things happening. I mean, like these fucking mass shootings and stuff. Like it's going to get to the point where it's so bad that the only option is to literally ban guns. And then or something of that nature, something extreme that would obviously fix the problem. And we're trying to take steps for all of these big issues in order to not have to do the absolute extreme thing, but I just don't think that we're living in an era right now where nobody wants to change stuff. Everyone wants to take little baby steps, and it's just not good enough to solve these major problems. That's what I think.
Or they want to like be activists on Twitter or on social media and stuff like that, but not actually go out and do anything in real life that actually means anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I guarantee you one thing, there'd be no fucking mass shootings if guns didn't exist. And no one's going to argue that because that's the fact.
Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, but that doesn't mean that we have to do that. I mean, we could implement new gun laws and we could implement a lot of shit that would stop these tragedies from happening. But every time there's a mass shooting, it's talked about for a week on the news. Oh, we need gun control. Oh, we need mental health reform. People need to be background checks need to be better. You want to make sure you didn't kill someone, or your mental health is good before you're allowed to buy a gun, or all these different things that we could do that could help the problem. But it's not how it works. I guess it's not how it's working. Obviously,
Yeah.
There's fucking over 250 mass shootings a year in the United States. So it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, last week we were talking. I was talking with my friend Dusty on our mixed mental arts chats. We were actually talking about mass shootings the week before that, and then last week we were talking about that documentary directed by Michael Moore called "Bowling for Columbine" about the Columbine shootings that happened in 1999. And during one part of that, he was comparing the number. I don't think it was the number of deaths from mass shootings. I think it was the number of gun deaths. So that could include homicides too, which might account for the vast majority of gun deaths. I'm not sure. But like in all other industrialized Western countries, there were ranging anywhere from tens to hundreds of gun deaths per year. Like it's hundreds at the most here in Canada, I think, and it's like over 11,000 gun deaths a year in America. And an interesting thing about that is that it pointed to like proportionally in terms of our landmass and our population, we like Canada and other industrialized Western countries have like the same amount of guns, or at least comparable amounts of guns. But it seems like one of the main factors that contributes to all of these mass shootings in the United States, or at least more gun deaths, is this culture of fear that Americans seem to have, that gets sold to them, and that it seems like is more present in American culture, like being afraid of these things, like being afraid of Y2K or killer bees, or that someone with guns is going to come and kill you, is not, that sort of mindset is not as present in other countries. Like in Canada, for example, I'm not sure I've even met anyone who's even worried about someone who's going to come and shoot up their school or something like that.
No, it was never like it's never really. I mean, it happens. I know there was one in Toronto not so long ago. Like it still happens in Canada, obviously, but like clearly nowhere near as a big of a problem as it is in the States. The States is just like exponentially more mass shootings and gun violence and everything like that. And there's a fucking obvious reason. Well, I shouldn't say obvious, but there's obviously a reason for it. And it really needs to be fucking talked about and worked out because it's fucked up. And then, there's over 400 million guns in the United States.
Something like that.
And there are only 300 million people. I mean, you know what?
Yeah.
I get it. If you want to defend your house, if you want to defend your family, I understand your reasoning behind that. But under no circumstances would you ever need more guns than people. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if somebody breaks into your house, you don't need 15 guns to defend it.
Yeah, for sure. And you probably don't need like a bazooka or an assault rifle or something like that.
No, you definitely don't. You definitely don't. It's there's so many problems that are factors in these major issues that we all talk about, and it's not just simply there are too many guns. There's obviously mental health issues, and there are all sorts of different things that factor into the reason as to why these things happen. But I mean, there are definitely 2 or 3 that come to mind that could be dealt with, and it would definitely help. Like Bernie said the other day on the podcast, he's, if we banned assault rifles, I'm not saying that next week it's going to be much better, but we have to do the best that we can do. We have to react somehow. We don't know the answer. We don't have fucking statistics in front of us to absolutely prove that, if you ban assault rifles, then this much less gun violence is going to happen. But like, we have to try and do something. Jesus, we can't just do nothing just because we don't 100% know the answer. We have to try something. We're talking about people walking into a Walmart and shooting kids. This is fucked up. We have to try and stop it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, even though the number of mass shootings has been increasing, they do, and the media exaggerates the frequency with which they happen. Like, you're still more likely to be struck by lightning than to be killed in a mass shooting. But that doesn't matter if you're a victim of a mass shooting or a family member of a mass shooting. And then also, if you take away guns from mass shooters, there's such fucked up people that they'd probably do something else, like get in a truck and run over a whole bunch of people or something like that. But also, like, it's probably more difficult to kill someone that way than it is if you have like an assault rifle with a whole bunch of ammo and you can go to a populated area where it's inside where a vehicle can't go or something like that. And then also, I was hearing from this sort of progressive journalist named Michael Tracy that there used to be an assault weapons ban in America from, I believe it was 1994 to 2004, and the number, and there were hardly any mass shootings during that time. I mean, Columbine is an obvious exception, but I think during that time there were far less mass shootings than there are today.
One thing I don't like about the comparison of you're more likely to be struck by lightning than to be a victim of a mass shooting is there's a major difference between people dying from getting struck by lightning and the malevolence and ill intent and evil intent from a mass shooting.
True.
Even if,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I mean, like, you can't really control if you fucking get struck by lightning. There's not a whole lot you could do about that. I mean, there's very little you can do about that. And it's not like the lightning is like, oh, look at him, I want to fucking kill him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to the idea to react to something that you can control because of evil intentions is different than, you know, people getting hit by cars or people getting
Hmm.
struck by lightning. I mean, there's obvious difference there, I think.
And people aren't about to ban vehicles because people use
Exactly.
them primarily for purposes other than killing people.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if there was some outbreak all of a sudden of, you know, um, crazy group of people that had a name for themselves, and all of a sudden now we're 2 million Americans a year are dying from getting run over by cars. You know, there'd probably be a fucking rule about cars, a new rule that's implemented, but that's not really what's happening. But what is happening is there are fucking lunatics walking into Walmarts with fucking ARs, shooting 30 people and then killing themselves.
Yeah.
And that's a fucking real problem. And I
Yeah.
think that it's just so messed up that more isn't being done about it. You know, it's just talked about for a few days and then nothing gets done, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad. And like you said, it's a really complex issue with so many different factors that it's hard to figure out what to do. But like you said, that doesn't mean that nothing should be done either. I mean, like if anything, if there could be some sort of experiments that people do to see the results that aren't that risky to do, like there are a lot of different things that you could do, like reinstitute the assault weapons ban or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, try something, right? Something is better than nothing. And the pushback that I gotta go here in about 30 seconds. I'll
Oh,
say
okay.
one more thing.
Sure.
Sorry. But the pushback that's coming from these gun owners is just, in my opinion, it's selfish because, like, if you had like if you were a gun owner and you knew that, okay, you know what, I'm gonna give up some of these guns because this is something that, you know, it's a pressing problem that no one knows the solution to. But if we give up some of these guns, this probably could help a big part of this situation. I think it's so fucking crazy that there are people that are fighting against that. It's like,
Yeah.
what if you could help this situation by cooperating and agreeing and supporting the ban of certain guns or the stricter gun regulations or whatever? Why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? Why wouldn't you want to help? You know?
Yeah. I mean, uh I don't know. I mean, I know that was a rhetorical question, but I can't understand the psyche of someone like that. But I think the idea they is that they maybe even they want to help in this situation. Well, yeah, actually, I guess a lot of conservatives in particular literally believe that banning guns in any sort of way is not effective because you can find statistics to prove any political point regardless of what it is. You can find political statistics that show that banning guns is effective in reducing violence. You can show statistics that show that it's ineffective. And if you look at data from like right wing think tanks, they'll probably show that gun control is ineffective. And if you look at left wing funded think tanks, they'll probably show that it is effective. So they just have, well, not all of them, basically, of course, but some people, I guess, have that mindset, and that particular mindset, I guess that's understandable if you literally think that gun control will not be effective in reducing violence. I can understand that mindset.
You know, I get the argument, but the argument's weak when you consider the fucking happenings of what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are fucking dying. People are dying. Random fucking people in Walmarts and schools are dying. So you're manipulate, like your attempt to, of not you, but like the gun owner people who are trying to defend their gun rights and everything. They're just manipulating statistics and everything just because they want to keep their guns. But it's like, I get that. We're not taking the guns away from you because you're a bad person. We're just trying to do something here. Work with us. The
Yeah.
president is just a human, just like everybody else. It doesn't mean that he has the answers and he knows all the answers and he's part of this team of people that they know everything that there is to know, and it's like they're just trying stuff and they're trying to do the best they can do. And obviously this is a problem that needs to be fucking dealt with in some way, and no one knows how to deal with it. So where do we start? you know I think your mic is muted.
Oh yeah, sorry, I had myself muted. I forgot to unmute myself.
Listen,
Yeah,
I really got to take I really do want to continue this conversation.
but
I'm
you gotta
sorry to
get
cut you
going.
off, but I gotta go. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, sure. Yeah, we can end it here. I'll just say all the stuff I like to say at the end of my episodes, and then you can give any last words or anything like that. So, yeah, thanks everyone for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. Hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. It was a nice surprise to have Channing join the chat too. And yeah, like I always say, thanks to everyone who likes and shares this video, and to those of you who subscribe to my channel, and especially to those of you who contribute to me on Patreon. I really appreciate that. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. All right. Keep having mindgasms, everyone. And any last words there, Channing?
Thanks for having me on. It was a surprise for me too. I noticed you guys were live, so I decided to join in. Thanks for the invite, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
For sure, man. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. And adios until next time.
Take care.